If you look at what is happening between Ottawa and Washington right now, it doesn't look like retaliation. It doesn't even look like trade policy. It looks like an execution. For decades, the electric vehicle revolution in the United States was sold as a story of American innovation, American factories, American dominance. But as of this morning, that story is dead. Mark Carney just killed it. And he did it with one signature. Canada just announced an immediate export ban on critical minerals essential to every single electric vehicle battery built in North America. Lithium, nickel, cobalt, graphite, the stuff that makes your Tesla run, your Rivian charge, your F-150 Lightning move gone, cut off, effective immediately. Donald Trump thought the tariff war was about cars and dairy and lumber. He thought Canada would fold, apologize, send a delegation, and beg for a deal. Instead, Mark Carney went for the jugular. He targeted the one sector the White House cannot afford to lose, and the consequences of that single decision are already ripping through Wall Street, through factory floors, and straight into the future of American manufacturing. Trump is raging, the auto industry is panicking, and the media is still talking about tariffs on maple syrup, while the entire EV supply chain is collapsing in real time. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what Canada did, why the United States has no immediate answer, and why the electric vehicle sector you were promised is now on life support. So, let's cut through the noise. Here is exactly what went down in the last 72 hours. It started as it always does, with Trump escalating after weeks of failed back-channel negotiations over the USMCA review. Trump decided to go nuclear. He signed an executive order imposing a 50% tariff on all Canadian aluminum and steel, on top of the 25% auto tariffs already in place. He went on Truth Social and called it the biggest trade correction in history. He said Canada had been robbing America blind for decades. He said it was time for Canada to pay the full price of doing business with the greatest economy on earth. The message was clear: submit or suffer. The old playbook, the familiar script: shock, overwhelm, dominate. But someone in the White House forgot to check what Canada actually has in the ground, because what happened next didn't just surprise Washington, it terrified them. Prime Minister Mark Carney called an emergency session of cabinet. There were no leaks. There was no grandstanding for 14 hours. The Canadian government was completely silent. Markets were jittery. Pundits were speculating. The White House reportedly thought Carney was preparing to negotiate. He wasn't negotiating. He was loading a weapon. At 7 a.m. Eastern Time the next morning, Carney stepped up to a podium in Ottawa. Behind him, no flags of friendship, no American flag beside the Canadian one, just the maple leaf alone. He spoke for exactly 11 minutes. His voice was flat. His eyes were steady. He didn't mention Trump by name, not once. He said, and I quote, "Canada will no longer permit the export of strategic critical minerals to any nation that engages in economic coercion against the Canadian people. This is effective immediately. There will be no grace period. There will be no exemptions." Then he listed them: lithium, nickel, cobalt, graphite, rare earth elements, manganese, the entire periodic table of the EV revolution, banned every single one of them from crossing the border into the United States. The room went silent. Reporters didn't even ask questions for a full 30 seconds, because everyone in that room understood what had just happened. Canada didn't just retaliate. Canada just pulled the plug on the American electric vehicle industry, and the receipts started printing immediately. Let me show you receipt number 1. The market massacre within 45 minutes of Carney's announcement. Tesla dropped 9%. Lucid dropped 17%. Ford's EV division, which was already bleeding money, saw its stock fall so fast that trading was briefly halted. GM's Ultium battery program, the crown jewel of their electric future, relies almost entirely on nickel and lithium processed through Canadian supply chains. Their stock dropped 11% before lunch. The Nasdaq Composite fell 600 points in a single session. 600, not because of earnings, not because of inflation data, because one country turned off the tap. The analysts on CNBC were stammering. They didn't know what to say. One of them actually said on live television, "I don't think anyone modeled for this." No, they didn't. because everyone assumed Canada would always say yes. That assumption just died. Receipt number 2, the mineral math. This is the one that should terrify every American policymaker, and it's the one none of them seem to have understood until yesterday. Canada is not just a supplier of critical minerals to the United States. Canada is the supplier. Listen to these numbers. Canada supplies 52% of the aluminium used in US EV battery casings. Canada supplies the majority of Class 1 nickel going into American cathode production. Canada controls some of the largest undeveloped lithium deposits in the Western Hemisphere. The graphite processing facilities being built in Quebec were specifically designed to feed American gigafactories. The rare earth processing plant in Saskatchewan was the centerpiece of the US strategy to reduce dependence on China. That plant just went dark for American buyers. You understand what just happened. The United States spent 5 years and hundreds of billions of dollars trying to build an EV supply chain that didn't depend on China. They succeeded. They moved the dependence from Beijing to Ottawa, and now Ottawa just locked the door. The entire Inflation Reduction Act, the $369 billion climate investment, the subsidies, the tax credits, the factory announcements, all of it was built on one assumption that Canadian minerals would flow south forever. That assumption is now a pile of ash on Mark Carney's desk. Receipt number 3, the factory floor nightmare. This isn't just about stock prices. Real factories are shutting down real production lines right now. The battery plant in Georgia that was supposed to start production next quarter delayed indefinitely. They cannot source cathode material without Canadian nickel. The lithium processing hub in Nevada is operating at 40% capacity because its feedstock came from a mine in Ontario that just stopped shipping south. Ford's assembly plant in Tennessee sent workers home yesterday. Not temporarily. They use the word indefinite. I want you to hear that word indefinite. These aren't Canadian workers. These are American workers in American states, in American congressional districts being laid off because their president picked a fight with the country that supplies their raw materials. This is the part Trump didn't understand. You cannot tariff your way out of geology. The minerals are where the minerals are, and the minerals are in Canada. So let's talk about why this happened. Why did Carney go this far? Why didn't he just do the usual Canadian thing, retaliate with tariffs on bourbon and orange juice, and call it even? Because Carney isn't playing the old game. He's rewriting the rules entirely. Carney understood something that no previous Canadian Prime Minister was willing to act on. Canada's greatest leverage isn't its trade volume. It's not its military alliance. It's not even its diplomatic relationships. Canada's greatest leverage is what's in the ground. The 21st century doesn't run on oil. It runs on lithium. It runs on nickel. It runs on cobalt and graphite and rare earths. And Canada is sitting on one of the largest deposits of all of them on the planet. For years, Canadian leaders treated these resources like a polite gift to the world. Here you go, America. Here you go, Europe. Take what you need. We'll dig it up. We'll process it. We'll ship it south. And we'll accept whatever price you offer. Carney just ended that era. He looked at what China did with rare earths a decade ago, and he studied the playbook. China didn't just sell rare earths. China weaponized rare earths. They used export controls to punish Japan. They used supply restrictions to build leverage over the entire Western tech sector. Carney just did the same thing, except he did it faster, and he did it to America's face. While Trump was tweeting insults, calling Carney a failed banker and a WF puppet, Carney was on the phone with Seoul, with Tokyo, with Berlin, with Brussels. Sources say he spoke with the European Commission president for over an hour. The message was simple. Canada's minerals are still available, just not to countries that attack us. We are hearing reports that South Korea and Japan are already negotiating emergency mineral supply agreements directly with Ottawa. BMW and Volkswagen reportedly sent delegations to the Canadian embassy in Berlin within hours of the announcement. Do you see what's happening? Canada isn't just cutting off the US. Canada is redirecting the flow. It's building a new mineral supply network that goes around America. And every country that joins that network becomes a partner in isolating the United States from the EV future. Trump is playing checkers. Carney is playing chess with the periodic table. And right now, Carney is winning. The White House response has been chaos, pure unfiltered chaos. Trump held a press conference that lasted 8 minutes. He called the export ban an act of economic war. He threatened to invoke the Defense Production Act. He threatened to nationalize mining operations. He said he would order American companies to find minerals, quote, anywhere else. The problem is there is no anywhere else. Not quickly, not at scale, not without China. The United States has exactly one operational lithium mine. One. The Pass mine in Nevada is still ramping up and won't reach full capacity for years. American nickel production is negligible. American cobalt production is essentially zero. The rare earth processing facility in Texas is a pilot project, not an industrial-scale operation. Trump can scream about the Defense Production Act all he wants. You cannot executive order a lithium mine into existence. Geology doesn't care about your politics. It takes 10 to 15 years to develop a new critical mineral mine from discovery to production. Carney knows this. Carney knows that for at least the next decade, the United States cannot replace Canadian supply. That is the leverage. That is the weapon. That is why the markets aren't betting on Trump to win this one. Let's talk about the political fallout, because this is where it gets really interesting. The governors of Michigan, Ohio, Georgia, and Tennessee have all issued statements in the last 24 hours. Not one of them supported the president's tariffs. Not one. The governor of Michigan called for an immediate summit with Canadian provincial leaders. The governor of Georgia said that 12,000 jobs in his state are directly tied to the EV battery supply chain, and every single one of them is now at risk. The Republican senator from Ohio went on Fox News and said, and I quote, "We need to talk to Ottawa, not tweet at them." Fox News, a Republican senator criticizing the president's approach on Fox News. That tells you everything about how scared they are. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce issued its harshest statement in decades. They called the tariff escalation reckless, and the mineral ban a predictable consequence of economic brinkmanship. They are right. It was predictable. Everyone who understood the supply chain saw this coming. Everyone except the White House. And now the auto industry is turning on the president. The CEOs of Ford, GM, and Stellantis reportedly requested an emergency meeting at the White House. They didn't get one. Instead, they got a tweet telling them to build factories in America and stop relying on foreign countries. Build factories to do what? Process minerals you don't have. Assemble batteries with nickel that doesn't exist domestically. Disconnect between the White House and economic reality has never been wider, and every day it continues. Another factory slows down, another shift gets cannelled, another worker goes home. Now let me talk about Carney's strategy, because it's more sophisticated than most people realize. Carney didn't just ban mineral exports. He structured the ban with surgical precision. Agricultural products are untouched. Energy exports for now continue flowing. The ban targets only the minerals classified as critical to advanced manufacturing and defense. This is deliberate. Carney is sending a message. I'm not trying to destroy your economy. I'm trying to destroy your ability to build the future without us. It's a scalpel, not a sledgehammer, and it leaves the door open for negotiation while maximizing pain in the exact sector Trump has been bragging about. Remember, Trump signed the Inflation Reduction Act's EV provisions into his legacy. He took credit for the factory announcements. He took credit for the jobs. And now those very jobs, those very factories are the ones shutting down because of his tariffs. Carney has turned Trump's greatest economic talking point into his greatest economic vulnerability. That is not luck, that is strategy. And here is the other dimension nobody is talking about: defense. The Pentagon uses the same critical minerals for fighter jets, missiles, submarines, satellite systems, and advanced radar. The F-35 program alone requires nickel alloys and rare earth magnets that come from, you guessed it, Canada. Defense officials are reportedly furious. A senior Pentagon source told Reuters that the mineral ban has created a, quote, national security crisis that has nothing to do with any foreign adversary. The threat isn't from China. The threat isn't from Russia. The threat is from the White House picking a fight with the country that supplies the materials for American weapons systems. You cannot make this up. The United States is now less secure, not because of an enemy, but because its president decided to bully its closest ally. So where does this go from here? Here are the three scenarios, and none of them are good. Scenario A, the negotiated climb down. Trump quietly drops the steel and aluminum tariffs. Carney lifts the mineral ban. Both sides issue a joint statement about renewed partnership. This is the rational outcome. This is what would happen if rational people were in charge. But Trump cannot climb down publicly. His base would see it as surrender, and Carney has now staked his entire political identity on standing up to America. Neither leader can afford to blink. So scenario A is possible but unlikely. Scenario B, the prolonged freeze. Tariffs stay. The mineral ban stays. Both economies suffer. The EV sector in the US enters a deep freeze. Canada redirects mineral exports to Asia and Europe over the next 12 to 18 months. American automakers start sourcing from Australia and the Congo at higher prices and lower quality. The EV transition in the US is delayed by 5 to 7 years. China fills the gap. China wins. This is the most likely scenario, and it is a disaster for American competitiveness. Scenario C, the full rupture. Trump escalates further. He sanctions Canadian entities. He restricts Canadian access to the US financial system. Canada responds by cutting energy exports. Oil prices spike to $140 a barrel. The North American economy enters a recession. NATO fractures. The Western alliance, already strained, simply breaks. This is the nightmare. And with this White House, with this level of ego and miscalculation, you cannot rule it out. I think we are heading straight into Scenario B, with Scenario C lurking in the shadows every time Trump opens Truth Social at 3 a.m. Here is the bottom line. The United States built its electric vehicle future on Canadian rock. That was the plan. That was the strategy. That was the trillion-dollar bet. And in 1 week of ego-driven brinkmanship, that bet just blew up. Mark Carney didn't do this because he wanted to. He did it because Trump left him no choice. When you corner a country that controls your supply chain, don't be surprised when they cut the cord. Carney just proved something that will reshape global politics for a generation. Small countries aren't powerless. They just need to know where the leverage is. And Canada's leverage was always in the ground, waiting. Trump dug his own grave. Carney just supplied the minerals. The question now isn't whether the US EV sector survives, it's whether it survives this decade. The question isn't whether Trump backs down, it's whether he backs down before the damage becomes permanent. And the question for you watching this right now is simple. Do you think Carney went too far, or did Trump push him there? Is this the moment America lost the EV race? Or is this the wake-up call that finally forces Washington to treat its allies like partners instead of punching bags? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want to know what happens when the markets open tomorrow, make sure you're subscribed. This story is moving faster than anything I've covered. History is being rewritten in real time. Don't blink.